Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beer Blather 257. Buckle up! He's doing it. Donald Trump is doing it. With celerity, with alacrity, Trump is unburdening America of the idiocy that has been. With a smile and a chuckle, he not only has undone the Biden era imbecility that led to the peaceful invasion of our borders and the violent takeover of our cities, but he has reached a half a century into the past to put to rest some of the most damaging racist policies of the Democrats that the Democrats inflicted on the American body politic. Affirmative action, the soft bigotry of low expectations, gone. DEI policies destroying American institutions, gone. Abusive officers who heaped persecution and cancellation of U.S. citizens while wearing the Fourth Amendment as a dental floss bikini, gone. One day a month government employees with full salaries, yeah, they're gone. EV mandates destroying the auto industry, gone. Drought in California, gone. Solar panels, windmill farms in the North Atlantic, and the Paris Treaty, gone, gone, and fuck, gone. And he has not started yet. Keep in mind that this list is but a fraction of the beef enema the Trump administration is giving the woke apparatus in the US. Criminal aliens, lazy government employees, pseudo religious charities exploiting migrants, weapons for terrorists, all gone. Mexico, Canada, Venezuela, Colombia, China, Russia, and Iran are beginning to understand that a new sheriff is in town. And ISIS, Al Qaeda are beginning to understand that they have no place to hide, here or in Somalia. When the dust settles, President Trump will have restored sanity in America and health to the world. Buckle up and try to keep up. This is Sol Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information, from my golden cage in Florida, still, believe it or not. And this guy, right next to me over there, is Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers from Californication. A land so fuck up, I don't know where to begin, except that now you have water.
Well, I know where to begin. I heard something today and I just looked it up before we went on the air. Pacific Palisades is under the aegis of something called the Residence Protections Ordinance. Do you know what that means?
That the residents are fucked.
Pacific Palisades, when it's rebuilt, a certain percentage of the homes must be available to low-income housing.
I know. And you and I thought we were kidding when we said we're going to end up with installing monoblocks in there.
Yep, that's what's going to happen, regardless of the price of the land, regardless of the private ownership of the land. A certain percentage of the homes now. So what the city is going to try to do is they're going to try to force people who lost everything, if they intend on rebuilding on their plot, they must put in a multi-dwelling unit for low-income families rather than a private dwelling. So the majority of the people in Pacific Palisades voted blue no matter who, and now they're seeing what happens. You lose everything, and then the state comes in and they take the very last bit of what you had.
Yeah, and your dignity too.
Pacific Palisades is going to become a third world pile of crap. And it's because people in California voted in somebody who made multiple trips to Cuba when she was a young woman. She belonged to the Venceremos organization or something like that. A literal communist organization, and So they are going to force people who voted faithfully for them and given massive amounts of dollars in donations, they're going to force them to give up their land so that third worlders can be housed in Pacific Palisades, because equity requires that third worlders get the same view as the people
Yeah.
who actually paid for that view.
Well, they can from Baja California, in the environs of Acapulco, they can get the same views. Yeah, my heart goes out to the neighborhood. You know that I lived there for a brief while in the early '80s, and I have nothing but fond memories of the place. But my apologies from those people I knew and those I didn't, and especially to James Woods. But frankly, they asked for it. 76% of the people in Pacific Palisades voted for Harris.
Of course.
Nearly 90% voted for Gruesome and this stupid, stupid cow, Bass. And by the way, she was in some communist group visiting Cuba. She was the token darky in the group because, as you know, shit, I went to Cuba several times. Uh, I never met anybody so stupid. Never. And I can assure you from personal interaction that the upper echelons of the Cuban Revolution were so fucking racist, that they would advise me not to, that the only thing these black women are good for is hygienic purposes. If you're going through a dry spot of months, maybe you want to dip your oil stick into them, but that's about it. This is the opinion they have.
Yeah, I mean,
She,
I
she
knew
chose them.
from spending 10 years in Hollywood that these people were um, they were racist. They hated black people, they hated Mexican people, they hated Jewish people, and they hated gay people.
Yeah.
And they were all perfectly comfortable expressing those views
Oh yeah.
among their own. So it's really funny because I mean now like Pacific Palisades. Let me read you this. Um, Pacific Palisades is considered, let's see, a higher opportunity area. The new resident protections ordinance requires that every high opportunity area designate a certain percentage of its housing to low equity family, low income.
For the unwashed.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
this is a new law. Um, it hasn't taken effect yet, but it will take effect before long. Um, and it's going to hit Pacific Palisades extremely hard. That anybody who's there are apartments for rent in Pacific Palisades, and a certain percentage of those will be the landlords will not only be forced to rent those to low income renters, but they will also be forced to top off what the rent is. So they're not going to be able to charge the actual rent that area is capable of charging.
No,
So
no. There's gonna be a rent control type of shit.
it's totally rent controlled now. So no landlord in his right mind would even rebuild. They would just hold on to the land until the
Yeah.
law changes. And so the next step is that the city is thinking of using its own power. It says here let's see.
Let me guess. They'll take your land if you don't build.
Yes. It actually says, let's see. Um, it actually says they will use police power. Um,
Ooh.
the cities have been afforded the power to police these areas, meaning if you don't rebuild, then the city will seize the property and build low income housing themselves.
Yeah.
So the people in Pacific Palisades, I mean, they're screwed. There's nothing they can do. They voted for all of this, and you know, um,
Literally.
it's too bad.
Literally. I cannot stress it enough. These are the most loyal funders of the Democratic Party and voters of the Democratic candidates.
Exactly.
It, they deserve anything and everything that happens to them. I'm sorry. Let Karen Bass turn Pacific Palisades into a beachside fucking slum. They all deserve it.
Well, this is what's going to happen. I mean, they've already said, and
Yeah.
also the they have to rebuild according to environmental um,
Oh,
demands that didn't exist when these buildings were created, and by law, this is what's so bizarre. You can have homeowners insurance, but it can't be used toward rebuilding by
oh,
law.
it can be used toward what?
Exactly. This is
By
California.
buying something in Montana.
Yeah, I mean, this is California. You can't use you if you do have insurance, it can't be used toward rebuilding. So essentially, this is an attempt by the city and by extension the state to seize all this property and turn it into a giant third world slum. So
That's why Gruesome was so upset at the idea that somebody may be offering money to buy the lots of the affected.
yep.
Son of a bitch. By the way, I didn't say anything because you know how sometimes you see something and you don't realize there's been changes because that something is what you were accustomed to seeing before.
Mhm.
Congratulations on your beard, my friend. Finally got rid of the stupid mask.
It's back. I took it off. I have to be very careful trimming the thing from now on.
Oh yeah.
I have a big screen TV that I use. It's I got Amazon Prime, Netflix, Tubi, a whole bunch of streaming channels. And if you pause it to go make a cup of coffee or whatever, almost immediately it like
It
it won't
disconnects you.
when Amazon, since this is all run by Amazon, it's gone into my computer and it's taken every photo that it found in the computer and uploaded it to the Amazon cloud. So when I came back after making my coffee, here's a picture of me from 2014, and I had a beard like this. I totally
Hmm.
forgot that. It was gigantic, and so I just kind of sat there and watched it because the photos were going up chronologically, and I had a giant beard, and I can't even imagine having a beard that huge again. Also, my hair was pretty long, so the parents died in 2013, and I think I just let everything grow for a year or so because or more. It had to be more. You can't grow a beard that long in a year. I don't think. Um,
Well, I could. I don't think I can. This is what 4 months.
okay, yeah. Yeah,
So
maybe I
I guess, and
maybe
yours it's in full splendor, but it took a month. No,
the,
2 months
the,
almost.
the yeah. See, I've had a beard since I was 18, but it was always really sparse, and it only really took off as a beard when I was in my late 30s. But this is a genetic thing. My father My father was obsessed with the fact that his sons had chest hair because he said that he himself never had chest hair until he was 38 years old. And um,
Right.
he, if he ever saw us shirtless at the beach or whatever, he would start jabbering about chest hair. And my beard didn't really grow in full until I was 38. So some
Yeah, no,
genetic.
mine came in with a vengeance early on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There you go. This is when I was 20, literally. As you can see, I've also been involved in a hair relocation program because back then I had no hair on my chest. Now I do. I guess it's all the hair from here just moved to other areas. Um, but it's fun. I'm gonna trim it in a few days because if I don't trim it a couple of times a year, then it's gonna go down to my balls. When I was in the Amazon, I had the beard got literally uh, past my navel, and for a short period, I had a little monkey living in it.
I saw a police video today, I think. It was about this nurse who'd come from a crap family. She was 24, her father was 65, and he showed up at her house and lit up a cigarette. And she said, "You know, you're not allowed to smoke in my house." So he pulled out a pistol and shot her dead and then went out and took a walk. And so the police pulled him over. And this guy had 3 or 4 foot long hair and about a 3 or 4 foot long beard. And after they handcuffed him, they had to frisk his hair and his beard because they had to make sure he didn't have like a little holster around his neck or something.
Right.
And it's just like that took place in California. I think the state is having a collective mental breakdown. I know that the anti-Trump meltdowns haven't abated at all.
Oh, they're picking up.
Let's
Ha-
see.
have you watched the Spanish language newscasts from Los Angeles?
No.
Oh, baby. Meltdown doesn't even begin to describe it. These people are over themselves. Everybody's so afraid. Everybody's crying. Everybody, I, I don't know. I was stopped by eyes, and they asked me for an ID, and I didn't have one, so they deported me. Were you driving? Yes. Duh.
Well, okay. If you can't speak English and you don't have an ID, then I'm sorry. Um, and you can't prove that you were born in this country or that you're a naturalized citizen, then yeah, you deserve. You're so stupid. You deserve to be deported. But okay,
The Walmarts are empty. The Walmarts are empty. Not here.
did you see the candidates for the DNC being interviewed and giving their spiel? It's a whole long stage worth of people. They're the wokest they've ever been. Um, they all said that Kamala lost because of racism and misogyny. Um,
Of
the
course.
black the fat black woman there who was trying to be a candidate, she sang a song. Um, you know how there's a certain style of singing where you at the end of each stanza you draw out the word, whoa. She was doing that. Most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. Um, the wokest candidates for the DNC. That's where the party's going now. They're going far more woke than they've ever been.
Yeah, they're gonna make Trudeau look like Churchill.
Did you hear about the transsexual movie about the
Oh God, the God with Selena Gomez, that stupid cow, and
Hey, this is really important.
Zoe
That,
Saldana.
that movie was nominated for more Oscars than The Godfather.
Then
But
Casablanca. I mean, are these people really that fucking brain?
hey,
Did you
the
see
movie,
it?
the movie's horrible. Everybody's the clips. Choose any clip. It's
Oh,
horrible.
oh my God! It's the most god awful piece of shit I've ever seen on film.
It's a musical. None. It's a musical in Spanish. None of the principal leads spoke Spanish, so they had to learn how to speak Spanish phonetically.
And it's
The
very
French,
funny.
the French director says that Spanish is a language of peons, of farmers, and
Yes,
uh, grape pickers.
and
And
French is the language of horse and faggots.
well, exactly the transsexual lead is a fan of Hitler, is a racist, is hates Muslims, hates Jews. So this whole thing was the number of Oscar nominations it got was intended as a giant screw you to Trump. And what
Yeah,
happened was the whole thing blew up in their face.
yeah.
Hispanics, Mexicans, to be specific, hate the movie. Gays hate the movie. Transsexuals hate the movie. Everybody hates the movie.
Anybody. And you said it's a musical in Spanish where the actors don't speak Spanish, including Selena Gomez, who couldn't speak Spanish to save her life, but they can't sing either.
No,
It's the most god awful thing I've ever seen.
there's a scene where the lawyer. Okay, and the plot of the movie is the cartel leader is a monster, but when he becomes a woman, all his sins are washed away, and now
Yeah,
he
by the way, it's a monster who becomes a woman to avoid capture.
exactly. But
Yeah,
now that he's a woman, he's an angel, and we're supposed to forget about all the people he murdered. That's the message of the movie. And there's a scene where his lawyer, played by an actress named Zoe Saldana, who had to
Zoe
learn
Saldana.
phonetic Spanish, she she goes to the doctor to find out what the surgery is, and there's this god awful scene where the doctors are all singing in chorus. You take the penis, cut off in the vagina, and it's just like this is real. This is real. This is a
You're
real
kidding.
movie.
Yeah, you're kidding. I mean, it, it looks, if you take these clips, it almost looks like a spoof, but it
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah,
These
exactly.
fucking idiots actually did it on purpose. They think they have a message in there. I've never
Yeah,
seen, and the character played by Selena Gomez, whose Spanish, high school Spanish accent from San Francisco is painful to hear. What were these people thinking?
well, guess what? Only her father is Mexican. Her mother is like a white woman, or
Her father is like Obama's father, a semen donor, because he got the mother pregnant and skipped town. She never met him.
and she's crying. Okay, she put up a TikTok video that she had to delete, or a Twitter where she was
The
crying about
the
her people,
crying one,
and
my
everybody said,
people.
since you're worth 1.3 billion, why don't you house these people in one of your 12 mansions? That
Oops.
was the universal reaction to that video.
Yeah, I saw the video. I commented on the video. Um, but what really, and by the way, what really impressed me of the video is what a bad actress she is,
Oh yeah,
because it is contrived. I mean, she cannot even cry about her heritage and make it believable.
Well, none of these people, the people who cried after Trump won, think about it. You're sitting somewhere and Trump wins, so you run to your computer or your phone or whatever, so you could capture yourself crying. I mean, it's. I've seen. I mean, there are people who, okay, in courtrooms, they when you give the victim impact statement, there's people who are trying to hold it together. You know, they lost a son, they lost a husband, they
Yes,
lost a daughter, and
they're trying to be dignified.
they're trying to be dignified. I saw one. It was an astonishing. Usually, these people read statements. There was a man whose his 12-year-old daughter was shot dead by a 22-year-old. He shot her. He did a drive-by because he hated her because she never would have given him a chance when he was 12. So the father, when it came to doing his victim impact statement, he gave this astonishing, unrehearsed statement that it was utterly heartbreaking, and he totally held it together. He'd done all his grieving. He'd gotten the worst of it out of his system before, and he kept saying to the guy, look at me," you know, because the guy said something along the lines of the 12-year-old's boyfriend wasn't a real man. It's like he was a 12-year-old boy, so of course he wasn't a real man. And the father was saying, "You think of yourself as a real man, and you can't even look me in the eye." So I watch a lot of those things, and nobody wants to turn into a sobbing mess. The only people, see what it reminds me of, when the criminal is often given an opportunity to speak before they're sentenced, and they read a statement that their lawyer wrote for them, and they blubber through it. The first time they've ever showed emotion in the whole proceedings, and that's what these TikTok videos remind me of. It's all performative. It's by people
Yes,
who are competing to see who can cry the best, um, who can be
many
the,
many good onions were sacrificed in that service.
well. It's like who can be the biggest wet noodle, who can be the biggest weak sister, um, and
I
and
can tell you one thing. In my adult life, I've cried 3 times. Nobody saw me. Nobody ever will. I have a personal dislike for public outbursts of emotion. It's just not something civilized people do. When I see these people exposing their feelings to the crowd, what I see is grifters.
well, they're sharing. That's the word they use.
Yes,
And it's like,
they're grifters.
why are you sharing that with me? Why do you think I want to hear that or see
Right,
that? No, it's
right.
it's
You don't. Period. End of story.
the madness that we've been living under. Okay, you showed me a memo from the Pentagon that was saying effective immediately, no more identity celebration at the Pentagon, and they listed 7 different recognition or pride months. So that's a majority of the year. That's over half the year dedicated to celebrating and talking about and giving seminars on identity in the Pentagon. So, it's amazing that the incoming Secretary of Defense has to say this isn't things that the Pentagon should be doing. Identity month's dead at DoD. Exactly.
But by the way, that is the official title of the memo. These people. It reminds me, of course, of our banner today,
Yeah.
which is not created by me, but the actual page when you want to go to Kamala Harris's uh, uh, webpage in the whitehouse.org website, you get the 404 error. This page is unburdened by what has been.
Yep.
And then they put out this memo, Identity Month's dead, RDOD. Somebody's having a shit ton of fun behind the scenes.
You bet, because we've been living, Jim Acosta, his last CNN appearance, he was going to continue his fight against tyranny. We've just come through years of tyranny.
Jim Acosta, tyranny. If he wanted to fight against tyranny, what the fuck was he doing in DC instead of going to Cuba?
And he says he's going to become an independent. In other words, nobody will hire him. He's unhirable now.
He's going to become an independent because so far he's been a Democrat propagandist.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to become an independent. What was he until today?
Well, the White House is making room for multiple news outlets, like what is it, OANN or OAN?
OANN. I spoke with Chanel, and she's going to be back at the White House, and they're rotating people out of the Pentagon, like Politico and others, to make room for new ones. And I'll have you know that I don't know if we're going to get there, but I registered quod verum for the White House press room.
Well, if that happens, then good luck.
If that happens, you're going to be our White House correspondent.
No, I would have to wear a suit. You don't cry.
Why would you have to wear a suit?
You don't cry, and I don't wear suits. The last time I wore a suit was 2014. So
yeah, but you don't have to. I mean, if Fetterman doesn't wear a suit to the Senate, why the crap should you wear one to a press room?
Well, okay, I don't wear suits, but I think Fetterman wearing a hoodie and shorts is pretty grotesque.
I know, isn't it? I'm letting people read. I don't know if people can read, but I'm giving them time over there. Announcing you intend to fade noisily into irrelevance will never cease being amusing. Not at all. And by the way, Abilio, as you know, is how I call Jim Acosta because his name is Jaime Abilio. Abilio doesn't have an audience of his own. He's a freaking clown. He is Ted Knight in the Mary Tyler Moore Show. He's an idiot who reads something somebody else writes for him, doesn't understand what the crap he's doing, and plays victim whenever he has to be exposed to the actual public. And who's going to watch him?
No, and he's deeply unpleasant. He's deeply off-putting.
Okay, he is. He's even more off-putting in person, I'll let you know.
Well, people love to talk about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan got where he is because he's excellent at being an interviewer. I mean, you can't argue against his skill at being an interviewer, and it took him years to build up to the size he is. So Rogan has earned every penny he's making. Someone like Acosta, okay, Joe Rogan, people criticize him because he doesn't what's the word? He doesn't confront his guests. But he's very open that he's not there to confront people. He's just here to listen to them talk and ask questions and et cetera, et cetera. He's not a journalist. He's a guy who's talking to people. But he's personable, and it comes across. I mean, he and Trump spoke for 3 hours straight. And Trump told him at the end that he really enjoyed it. Kamala Harris, the reason she didn't go on Joe Rogan's show was because she wasn't able to. Um, Kamala Harris lacks the skill to just sit and vibe, just riff for 3 hours the way Trump does. And
Oh God, not for 15 minutes.
yeah,
I'll tell you what. If Kamala Harris had actually gone to the Joe Rogan show, Trump would have gotten 410 electors.
oh yeah, no, there's one of the guys running for the DNC is saying that the Democrats have to run Kamala again because she has a real chance of winning.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Winning
can
what? Winning what? He didn't say.
well exactly the candidates for 2028 are going to include Ocasio Cortez, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, um, Shapiro from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Shapiro, the Pennsylvania one, Shapiro.
I mean, and in all likelihood, okay, you and I talked about vice presidents who go on to be president. There's very few of them, but in all likelihood, Vance is going to run in 2028 because I mean he's still
Yeah, it's a it. This could be enough because, of course, there's only one term, and uh, those who would love to re-elect Trump would probably vote for Vance.
also Vance has shown himself to be the most formidable interviewee who's ever walked this earth. That he demolishes every single interviewer who tries to do the gotcha questions. He's always got the information at his fingertips. I didn't know anything about him. I knew he'd written a memoir that was made into a movie, but I didn't know anything about him. I'd heard his name, um, but he's unbeatable when it comes to interviews. I saw a guy talking about the difference between Trump and Vance giving interviews. And when Vance is confronted with a bad faith question from the interviewer, he tries to explain. And when Trump is confronted with a bad faith um, question for the interviewer, he says, "Shove it up your vagina." And you know, it's true. That's Trump versus JD Vance. JD Vance, Trump has no problem saying to somebody's face, "You are a horrible, horrible person. You are a nasty, nasty person." You know,
Or a pig.
yeah, exactly,
No, I'm sorry. That was only for the pig.
exactly.
Remember the debate? You
Yeah,
call
yeah,
women pig? No, that was only Rosie O'Donnell.
yeah,
She is a pig.
yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Perfect. That's something very few people have the nuts to do.
Well, this is the thing that Vance and Trump are entirely different in their style, but Vance has the ability. Uh, uh, Vance doesn't mind spending a little more time being a gentleman when he shoves the knife in. Um,
Yeah.
when Trump is dealing with people who he despises, he doesn't bother being a gentleman. And this term, he has no reason to be a gentleman. That's why in his press conferences he says, Buttigieg gave us all these bullshit excuses, and everybody like clutched their pearls and said, "Oh my God, how can he be so crude?" And it's like you haven't heard anything yet. Just wait.
Yeah.
I, I
And you know that in the context that you have painted him, Daydreamer is advancing here that Vance called Bannon's gal a mouth breather. He did. And that, believe it or not, was the gentlemanly thing to do.
Mhm.
Because if he actually says what I think she is not going to be so gentle at all. Um, he still has the gonads to call a spade, even though he does it with a smile sometimes.
Yeah, see, Vance is deadly because he doesn't lose his temper, and
True.
you're not quite sure that he's just shivved you until it's too late. Like Martha Raddatz when she said, "I want to make it clear that only a few apartment buildings have been taken over by the Tren de Aragua." And he said, "Can you hear yourself? Only a few
Yes.
buildings in the United States have been taken
How,
over by
how
Venezuelan
many?
terrorists."
How many does it take, you stupid cow?
Exactly.
Oh! I know that Biden got commissions from China, but it was only 1 million.
Yep.
What does that even mean? These
Well,
people are stupid. They are mouth breathers.
Musk has set up like a hashtag where you can go and you can type in whatever, and you can see how much money they're saving with Doge.
Mhm.
Musk said that they're getting rid of $1 billion of expenditures a day.
Now it's up to 4 for
Remember
2020. For 2026, it's 4 billion a day.
remember when they told us that getting rid of government waste wouldn't make a substantial difference? I
Oh,
heard
in 1790, probably not.
I heard a Republican senator say that when Musk is done, we're going to be saving trillions.
Well, you know the 90-day halt to all kinds of grants and bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can be reviewed. I hope they make them all permanent. I don't think we have to review them. I think we have to go ahead and lock them out. You know how much money is involved in the grants that Trump froze?
No.
Remember, it doesn't include food stamps, it doesn't include anything related to Medicaid, it doesn't include SSI or any of the other giveaways. It's just the money that the government gives to the likes of the Sierra Club and Catholic charities, and the condoms for
Gaza. Hamas.
Gaza, and the USAID giveaways, that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
3 trillion. 3 trillion. By signing that order, Trump cut 3 trillion a year in unnecessary government spending. Some of it may be restored, but that gives you an idea. It's a humongous $3 fucking trillion. It would be the fourth largest country in the world by GDP.
Mm-hmm.
It's an enormous amount that we spend on bullshit political programs, keeping your friends flush. It's insane.
Okay, you mentioned the 50 million to Gaza for condoms.
Yeah.
There's no way. Okay, number one, Hamas uses the condoms in their incendiary balloons.
Yes.
But number two, there's no way they spent 50 million on condoms. What they did was they spent, I don't know, a million on condoms.
10 million in condom, 10 million for you, 10 million for me, 10 million for the big man.
Exactly. That's what they did.
Of course. And 10 million to the DNC because, we have a campaign to run.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is so bloated. 60 years ago, there was graft. There was graft, no question about that.
Well, there's always been graft.
But the amount involved was peanuts compared to this. I remember one day I had in my office in Miami the Minister of Economics of Argentina, Domingo Cavallo, a son of a bitch from here to Timbuktu. He was in Argentina to see a friend of mine, and that's why he was in my office. That's where they met, who had just started a investment company, and he was very good friends with Cavallo. And notice I am giving you the names because I'm past giving a shit.
Hmm.
And Cavallo needed somebody to oversee his investments and the president of Argentina, Menem, in the US. Now, the big money was in Switzerland, but they had, a little bit in the US. A little bit in the US was 4 billion. And this friend of mine had a investment company with one $4 billion client, them. And this guy was complaining how things were going to shit. Because, what people are stealing in this government is insane. It's amazing. It has no precedent. And I keep telling them more than 10% is thievery.
Hmm.
More than 10%. So when they keep 30% of a construction project, it's thievery. When he keeps 10%, it's kosher. That's a standard measure. And that's how these people think.
Let's
And that's
see.
why they want mega projects. Because the bigger the project, the biggest the opportunity, and obviously the bigger the payoff.
Yep. I'm trying to figure out how much Spiro Agnew took.
Oh, peanuts.
Yeah. He had to resign, but
Yes. 71, 72? No,
73.
70, 73.
Yeah, Agnew's total take was tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Uh, William Jefferson, the Democrat who had $100,000 stuck in a freezer. A
Yep.
hundred grand. Those are, like rubber band thieves in the office.
Yep.
Today, you have people making billions of dollars in commissions on mega projects. You don't want to know what the Bidens actually took.
Well, I think we're going to know. I think Trump is going to let us know.
Oh yeah, it is coming.
He,
Today, everybody was distracted with bullshit. Um, Rounding errors in the modern graph says, yes, indeed. Um, Today, while everybody was talking about DC, which is a different story we can touch upon later, um, the DOJ is preparing an investigation on Chuck Schumer
mm-hmm.
for threats to Supreme Court justices.
Mm-hmm.
Remember,
Oh yeah.
eh, to Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, you will reap the whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tornado developing on his ass. It, it is going to happen. There is going to be an investigation on the 51 assholes who signed the intelligence community letter. First, their security clearances were canceled. Then, Trump issued for them a prohibition to enter any federal building.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that poetic? And now comes the clincher, which is the investigation on why did they interfere on the election. And there are already emails surfacing where the guy who is collecting the signatures from the other assholes writes to Brennan, uh,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were,
I saw that.
we're yeah, we're trying to give
Okay.
Biden ammunition
Yeah,
for the debate.
yeah.
I mean, can it be more clear than that?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard.
Everybody, one more thing. Everybody's talking about the JFK papers, which are going to produce absolutely nothing that we don't know already. What they're not talking about is that the declassified and unedited documents of the Mueller investigation are going to Congress now.
Yeah, yeah. Tulsi Gabbard showed up. I mean, she acquitted herself extremely well. She was attacked not only by Democrats but also by Republicans, and the fear is that she's going to be an activist DNI, like everybody else, and they want to try and. I mean, they don't have the votes to stop her, apparently, um, but they do want to threaten her, and I think that's exactly the wrong approach to take against someone like her. She's not
Oh,
the
she's gonna lash back.
she's not the same person she was even a few years ago. And okay, RFK Jr. acquitted himself well. He's got that voice problem, but in terms of what he was saying, no, the Trump train is now unstoppable. It appears, and the Democrats are doing even more of what keeps costing them votes. It's really astonishing. It's all real. It's when people say the problem with the Democrats is, it turns out it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
They're going to go more woke than they've ever been in their lives.
good. And I hope they have Alexandria Ocasio Cortez and Ilhan Omar
Yeah.
as candidates. Of course, Ilhan Omar cannot be a candidate. That was a joke, people. Uh, but I hope they do it. I hope they fucking do it. I wonder, by the way, how Ilhan Omar is feeling about Trump bombing Al Qaeda in Somalia.
I'm sure she cried because remember
Hmm.
she said the just when people say Al Qaeda, the word, it makes them stand straighter.
Yeah.
She actually
Well,
said,
some of these assholes are standing straighter because Trump dropped a missile up their ass.
well, they're standing straight but horizontally straight.
Yes, no, but straight because they have the missile inside. Um, it's again, that's another one today. Every time you turn around, there is something that needed to be done. Oh God! Today we had the first day of 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% on China for very specific reasons. Very specific reasons. Uh, the lack of collaboration in controlling the border, for instance, the lack of collaboration on controlling the traffic of fentanyl, or in the case of China, its production. And I will remind people that while we do have a very serious problem in the southern border, in the northern border is not a fucking picnic. Um, there are hundreds of New Jersey, New York gangs, for instance, doing the runs between Canada and the US with fentanyl and other drugs. Um, the traffic of illegals is jumped 600% in 1 year. So Canada definitely has to help a little bit more or pay for it.
Well, the Canadians are not they're not really allies. They have some of the same interests that we have, but if you recall, the prime minister who preceded Trudeau said that in the case of a missile attack on the United States by the Russians, we would okay, the way we would intercept those missiles is by, we would know as soon as the Russian missiles took off, we would know. So we would send interceptors over Canadian airspace to hit the Russian missiles on their, either at their apogee or on their way up. And this guy
Yep.
said that we would have to get permission from Canada to do that. And the Department the Pentagon said, no, we're just going to do it.
No, of course.
So also the Canadians were allowing known terrorists wanted by Interpol to enter the country and the Canadians have the same asylum system that we had, where it's like they give you a ticket and they say show up in 5 years for your hearing.
Yeah.
And the reason they were doing this was because they knew that all these guys would be headed to the US and would not be a problem for Canada.
No.
So the Canadians are not really allies, so nobody should be shedding any tears over a tariff on Canada. If they don't willingly help us, then they have to be forced to help us, and
They have to be forced.
That.
And of course, as expected, both Trudeau and Sheinbaum immediately announced retaliatory tariffs of their own. Good asshole. Now you're not only going to have to stuff avocados up your ass, you won't be able to get toilet paper to clean it because their industry shit.
Yeah,
what little there is of industry in both countries is small, inconsequential, and anything of any importance is actually American companies, say, assembling cars in British Columbia to save on labor, and you have American auto companies assembling cars in Mexico and Canada. Well, they're going to have to assemble them in the US. Big freaking deal. That's not a Canadian industry or a Mexican industry. That's American industry taking advantage of a tax break.
Well, speaking of Mexico, it's an open secret that now that we've declared that the cartels are terrorist organizations, we're going to hit them militarily,
Yes.
and it's almost certainly going to be an example-setting strike by some tier 1 group or couple groups, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and okay. The Mexican narco terrorists, they've now taken to making these videos where they all stand in line holding their weapons and the camera moves down so you can see all their bang bangs. I saw one a couple of days ago and it showed a big fat guy and he was holding a model 1919 Browning machine gun. So a machine gun that's 104 years old. And those are meant to be used on a tripod. There was no tripod. He was holding it one hand on the butt and one hand on the barrel. And he didn't have a heat-resistant glove on the barrel. So if he started firing, it was loaded with a belt of ammunition coming out. He would have burned his hand off because the barrel shroud it heats up immediately. So the cartels have pistols, rifles, machine guns, and Somali technicals, pickup trucks with armor plate and machine guns on them. They have no air power. They have no helicopter gunships. They have no armored vehicles, real armored vehicles. They have no transport aircraft. They have nothing. And they think, basically they're spoiled. They've bought off everybody in Mexico. I heard that the cartels now control 40% of the Mexican landmass.
Yeah.
So they haven't had a real.
And by the way, and the president of Mexico has made a commitment not to have a confrontation with the cartels.
Yeah. So, okay, everybody should understand that in Mexico they use what's called the silver or lead option, where they come to you and they say, here, take this $1 million or take a bullet to the head. So you can choose between the silver, which is the money, or the lead, which is a bullet to your head. So they bribe you, but they also threaten you at the same time. And
and they follow through.
And they follow through. I saw there was a case of a 77-year-old rancher, and one of the big cartels came to him and they said, "We're taking over your ranch. You have to leave in 48 hours." And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." So they showed up 48 hours later en masse. And what he'd done is he was a rifle collector. He'd set up a rifle at every window, and he ended up shooting and killing a double-digit number of them. And he did die, but he's still known today as a guy who, stood up against the cartels, and he inflicted massive damage on them. One guy all by himself. He had paid off all his workers and sent everybody home because he knew this was going to be his last stand. And the Mexicans could defeat the cartels on their own, but they don't. They don't want to. So
They don't want to listen. If they defeat the cartels, where does Claudia Sheinbaum get her income from?
exactly.
The cartels are not an enemy of the Mexican government. They're part of the Mexican government. This is, like the son of the mafioso pretending to be an industrialist.
Yep.
They're both in it. One is an industrialist and does only legal business. The other one controls the goons. But the two of them work together. The Mexican government and the cartels work in unison. They have common businesses. They have a common income stream. And the Mexican government has absolutely no desire to cut the flow of money to them. The rest
No,
is bullshit.
this is why almost certainly we're going to hit a cartel, the leadership, and we'll tell the Mexican government as the operation is being carried out. Um,
Yeah,
and
or the next day.
or the next day. And it's going to be carnage for the cartels, and it's going to be it'll be carnage by design.
Yes.
It'll be exactly like what Trump did to the Russians on September 7th, 2018 at Deir ez-Zor in Syria.
Or just now in Somalia. By the way, a lot of people are saying ISIS. Al Qaeda and ISIS are one and the same thing, for crying out freaking loud.
If it was Somalia, then it was Al-Shabaab, I believe.
Al Shabaab was Al Qaeda and then ISIS. But what people don't understand is that while the alphabet letter may change from time to time, we're talking about the same people.
Yeah.
ISIS was born out of Al Qaeda in Iraq.
Yeah. It was literally known as the Islamic State of Iraq. It was started by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was an Al-Qaeda member, and it became the Islamic State in Iraq. And only later, in 2011 or 13, it became the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
Oh, that was even later. That was even later because it was Ansar al-Sunni first.
Right. Al-Zarqawi was a Jordanian who went and fought in Afghanistan, and then he ended up in Iraq, where he started Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And then he was killed, and it was taken over by another guy. And then he retired, and then it was taken over by the one who we chased down in the cave. I forgot his name.
Al-Baghdadi.
Al-Baghdadi, yeah.
Al-Baghdadi.
But, okay, they were asking Tulsi Gabbard about it. And, Gabbard was pointing out that Gabbard was on the House Intelligence Committee, and she went public with the fact that we were training people who were affiliated with Al Qaeda and the Islamic State,
which Obama was,
and that's true. So
of course she went public after head of Al Azhar University, which is kind of like the Sunni
Etiquette.
Vatican, kind of like, before somebody corrects, because there is no such thing, but it's like considered one of the highest authorities in Sunni Islam. He was complaining about Obama financing Al Qaeda in Syria, and he was referring to this.
Mhm.
So even though it is true that she came out with this, but she didn't come out with this at the moment. She came out with this much later when everybody knew about it. Uh, but the point is, Obama,
It is that she talked about it, and
yeah,
nobody else, as no other members of Congress were talking about it. And
no, no, that is true.
so, okay, during her hearing, she was talking about the current state of Syria, and while it's true that the guy who's now considered the president of Syria, the interim president, is, you know, a
Al
member of
Julani,
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is formerly Al Qaeda.
formerly Al Nusra, which is the Al Qaeda operation that was being financed by Obama.
Right. And so we need to, I mean, I have no problem. I'm sure Gabbard and I would disagree on a lot of stuff, but I have no problem with that. Um, I have no doubt that she would not agree to us sending, air power troops to try and fuck with Syria. I mean, we're pulling our troops out of Syria. So
Mm.
I think it's up to the Gulf Arabs to make sure that Syria is a success. And if Syria becomes successful, then at some point, maybe Americans would want to invest in Syria, and maybe Syria could become a success story after all. We don't know. We have absolutely no idea
Well,
right
they have the resources to be such a success story.
now. Exactly.
But it's entirely up to them. I mean, can you imagine of any group of people anywhere in the world that had a better opportunity for a successful, prosperous society with some of the highest per capita incomes in the world than the freaking imbeciles in Gaza?
They had everything. They have a coast. They have a tourist industry. They have everything going for them. And look at them. They're still
And
still
and billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that would have been enough to turn any piece of land into paradise on earth.
yeah. No,
And what did they do?
you pointed out that the few hostages they've released have been forced to run a gauntlet of abuse from Hamas supporters.
Yes, in our private conversation, yes.
So they're hopeless. They're hopeless. And they're people who still need to be bombed. They still need to be targeted for assassination. And, you know, they'll learn eventually, but as long as they still have
Or
the.
or not, but I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
We
as long as they're powerless, as long as, okay, Israel has already said that Hamas will not be allowed to take power again. And,
no.
that's just how it's going to be. And, you know, those few Americans who actually care can make a TikTok video about it.
Yeah.
It's not going to
By the
change.
way, um, a lot of people are laughing because President Trump came out and said we should take those people to Egypt and Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't pick Egypt and Jordan in
Right.
a haphazardly manner, in a random manner. Gaza uh, was part of Egypt until occupied by Israel in 1967. Of course, Egypt was the aggressor. And when Israel withdrew in 2005, Egypt didn't want it back. And then the West Bank was part of Jordan until the War of 1967. Jordan was the aggressor. Israel ended up occupying that land. So it would be logical, okay, give the West Bank back to, fuck the second state, give the West Bank back to Jordan and Gaza back to Egypt. Of course, they don't want it.
Well, this is the thing.
So,
Trump wasn't saying round up the Palestinians and bus them to Egypt or Jordan.
yeah, well, but even if he did, it's a first step in a negotiation.
Yeah, exactly.
It so happens that today Egypt and Jordan have let it be known that they would be amenable to accepting women and children,
Aha.
but not the men, because there is no way to tell who's a terrorist, who's not.
Boy, that would be great if all the
Wait,
Palestinians.
wait, wait. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Hmm? So if the women and children go over there, by the way, I'd be careful with the children because some of them are already past the point of no return, but at least there is a chance. And I'm pretty damn sure that if there is a chance, uh, Egypt and Jordan would know how to handle it. And the rest of them, if they want to keep fighting, fine, fight until there isn't one left alive.
Yeah.
And then I used to say that we needed to build a Club Med in Gaza. I've changed my mind. I think that we need the Trump Golf and Beach Resort and Casino.
Yeah.
And we're going to build that over there. And the people of the world can go and rejoice and have a good time in a wonderful land devoid of sons of bitches. Of course, if I say this in Twitter, they will close my account. So I don't. But these vermin do not deserve to live. What they are, not what they have done, what they are doing to the hostages even now is unforgivable.
It's back to the frog and the scorpion parable. That the scorpion's going to sting no matter what. And these people, I mean, they've been given every chance in the world. They've not taken a single one. So they're not done being bombed yet. They're people who need to be bombed. That's all there is to it. They're a
That's
different
all there is to it.
a different
And
they're people who need to be bombed periodically.
yep. And I'm not for extermination, but whoever doesn't want to fight anymore, take him to a beautiful island in I don't know, Malaysia. There are plenty of beautiful islands they can live in and develop their own wonderful life away from anybody they can do harm to. T Lady is asking, do you believe there are any elected officials in some border towns who might be on the hook with the cartels?
Oh, of
I don't
course.
believe it. I know it. I know it. And if I told you who is in cahoots with the cartels, oh God, in Columbus, New Mexico, where Columbus police officers used to sell guns out of the trunk of cars at the police station parking lot to the cartels. You have no idea how corrupt some of our southern cities are.
Yeah, I mean, I do. It was
No,
shown
no, you do. I'm talking to in
by
general. You.
the school shooting in Uvalde. Um, you had these people who were too cowardly to go in and save a bunch of little kids, and then they lied their asses off about absolutely everything. Um, you know, that's
Yep,
corruption. That's moral corruption. That
that's wrong corruption.
position.
Uh, Kelly is saying the New Mexico governor is to which I would reply. Do you think the police in border towns can be in cahoots with the cartels, as I know they are, without the governor being a part of it?
Well, he gets a cut.
It's Mexican in its conception. Of course he does.
It's the same with California. The Mexicans call Southern California Alta Mexico, Upper
Yeah.
Mexico. And, that reminds me, an update on my citation from the city. I got
Oh, wonderful. We're going back to the adventures of Mr. K
I got
in Beer Blather.
the city to admit that the citation was valueless because they cited a section that applies only to commercial buildings and not residential buildings. There are no uh, there are no limits on what I can do to my residential building as compared to the commercial buildings, but I have to comply anyway. Yeah,
It, sometimes I tilt when I have to try and understand the logic of California Democrats. My brain seizes.
yeah,
They gave you a citation for violating a code that does not apply to your property.
correct.
You got them to admit that the code does not apply to your property,
I've got the name of the person who admitted it.
but you still have to comply with the code that doesn't apply to you.
Correct.
It's so Mexican.
Yeah. So I'm going to call them on Monday, and I've got the name of the guy I need to call. Um, he is Mexican, and
Ah,
what I'm going to tell him is that okay, here's the phrase I use with the first person. I was saying I was hoping we could zero out this whole thing. I think that's a nice bureaucratic
yes.
kind of neutral.
Just
I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna be very personable with the guy, and I'm gonna tell him that since since the mistake is the misunderstanding has already been admitted, um, I'm hoping we can zero this out because I'm being urged to carry out legal action against the city because now that I know that this 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 section doesn't apply to me, and I've seen in the city. I called the company that worked on my house. I said, do you have any lawyers that you work with? He said, no, because there's never been a problem. We've been doing this for 20 years, and we've never had any problem violating any city code because we're not violating any city code. So I'm going to tell the guy I'm being advised to litigate because it's clear that this code is being applied to me as an individual and not citywide. So what I'd like to ask you is how many other people have had to do the same thing that I'm doing? And if I can get him to admit nobody, I'm the first, then I'm gonna tell him, look, I'm gonna have to litigate.
discrimination. They're discriminating against half Mexicans.
Well, it's unconstitutional. You can't apply a city law to one individual. It's
And
totally
not, yeah.
unconstitutional. I do have a lawyer. The lawyer is very reasonable in what he charges, and I'm just gonna have to say, look, because I paid the fine initially to see what happened, and then I got another notice telling me that they were going to fine me continually until I complied, and so everybody admits that I haven't broken any. I'm going to tell him you can keep the fine. I'm not asking for a refund. What I'm asking is that we can zero all of this out because we already know that I'm not violating any code, and I know that
No.
This,
I'm going to be asking for damages and
well, that's what
civil
I'm
damages.
that if you know if this continues, I'm going to have to litigate because it's clear. I've driven around the city and I've seen that everybody is doing what I'm doing, and unless you're citing every single one of them with this code that doesn't apply to residential buildings, it applies only to commercial buildings. See, his only out, he gave me a new section, and it says at the top of the section that it applies only to commercial buildings. But the sentence, it's got four numbered sentences in this paragraph. He's citing the third sentence, and within the context of the paragraph, this applies only to commercial buildings. It says buildings must not have X. So he's taking that sentence out of its context, meaning only commercial buildings, and he's saying it
Yeah.
applies to all buildings.
Let's say, for argument's sake, your fence cannot be taller than 4 feet.
Exactly.
But that is for a commercial building. In a
Yeah,
residential building, you can have 8 feet if you freaking want, because there is no statute that limits it.
correct.
Okay. You see, the problem is that you're gonna go to a court where the judge is a DEI Democrat,
Correct.
and anything can happen. But somewhere along the line, this is the type of thing that some lawyers love to have,
Oh yeah.
because it's the question, is the civil rights issue
Yeah. And that's what
that is at play here.
when the city admits that they're misapplying a code, but you have to obey them anyway. See, he's trying to save face. And what I'm going to do is try to talk to him and say, this isn't a contest. I'm not, I'm going to avoid using the word mistake. I'm going to avoid using the word wrong. The guy who originally cited me is no longer working. They claim they're understaffed, blah, 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 blah. And
What happened to that one? He put a fine on the mayor.
well, see, what happened in my city is they had an animal control department and they had a code enforcement department, and they were paying the city of Baldwin Park to use their animal control department. And they said, hey, we can save money by making our city code people also become our animal control people. So all the city control officers are now animal control officers and city code officers. So figure that one out. So these people,
I can't. To think like one of those assholes, I would have to shrink my brain, and I can't.
the first time I spoke to the city guy, the code office enforcement officer who cited me, I left a message. He called me back at about 9:30 at night, and he was still working.
Poor thing.
Yeah. So the city is 98% Mexican, and only in a Mexican city would you have the government admit that they're wrong, but you have to obey them anyway. And so this is I'll speak to the head guy in charge, the one who makes the final decision. And if he still says I have to pay him, then I'll let the lawyer take over.
Yeah. When you go into his office, instead of saying good morning, say "Cubo carnal," and you're gonna have a much better chance of coming to a deal with him.
I saw a movie called The Money Pit with Tom Hanks.
Oh yes, I remember that one.
He had to have his pipes replaced, his plumbing replaced. And so they came in, they tore the house to pieces, and then they left. And he called him and said, "What happened?" And they said, "Oh, you need the code enforcement guy to give us the okay." And he missed the code enforcement guy because he'd fallen through a hole in his floor and was stuck there. So he finally, after he was rescued, he called the guy and he said, "What would it take to get you to come out here? A bribe? Okay, how much?" The guy said, "You have to bribe me." And so I don't want to offer the guy a bribe just because I don't know, but I'm going to ask him, what is it going to take to for us to resolve this? Because I really don't want to litigate. And just driving through the city, I see that. I mean, the guys who did the work for me, the ones who've been in business for 20 years, he says this isn't enforced even for commercial buildings. It's they
Nobody gives a shit.
Nobody cares. So for whatever reason, this guy has a bug up his behind about me, and that gives a lawyer a really good chance of
Yeah,
um,
yeah. With Mexicans, you don't say, what do you need, a bribe? But they'll get offended. Listen. Is there any way we can zero these out? I would very much appreciate it.
yeah,
I would consider it a personal favor if
yeah,
you did so.
yeah. Do
And
you want?
usually they say, well, for a Mexican brother, we can make an exception, and we give you a hand, and you give us a hand, and that's how you negotiate the bribe with them. Um,
Well, I'll offer to pay the fine again, and it'll go right into his pocket. I can send the I can send well, I can send an envelope with cash. That's what I can do. It's amazing. I never expected anything like this to happen to me. But of course,
yeah.
it's California, and
Uh,
only in
uh,
California.
uh, yeah, for some idiot who's watching us, uh, don't have any problem with this because, oh, you're paid a bribe, you're contributing to the problem. Now, the individual acts don't solve problems like this. You're going to spend an enormous amount of time and money that you may or may not recoup, or you give them a couple of $100 and that's the end of it.
Well, this is the thing that if I do have to take him to court, then I will definitely ask for lawyers' fees, and the city will be forced to pay my lawyers' fees because they've already admitted. I'll have that person
Yeah.
whose name I got. My parents told me when you're talking to the city or whatever, always get their name. So I've got her name, and um, she admitted that they cited me. They gave me the wrong citation, but I have to pay for it anyway. And so when she told me that, I just laughed and I said, "Okay, who do I talk to?" She said, I just do what I'm told." I said, "All right, who told you to do this? Can I have his name and I'll call him." So I got his name and number, and I'll call him, and we'll just see what happens. I mean, it's okay if people aren't familiar with Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka wrote about nightmarish bureaucratic governments that made no sense.
Yeah.
Um, and this I'm in a Kafka situation where
Oh,
the city has admitted that they're wrong, but I still have to obey them.
you are Mr. K.
Yeah,
Going from one bureaucratic department to the next, trying to solve a chicken shit issue,
yeah,
uh, made an ending by a cadre of useless bureaucrats.
yeah.
Welcome to America 2025. Because uh, if people are complaining that Trump is fired now in the tens of thousands, but still not even a blemish in the nomenclature corpus. If Trump were to fire 1 million government employees tomorrow morning, we wouldn't notice the difference.
No, no. When
We
I
wouldn't notice the difference.
when I was required, okay, during that period where they were trying to debank me, it was stopped by Wells Fargo. I know that Wells Fargo has a bad reputation. Wells Fargo asked me to come down to the nearest branch, and they told me that the government wanted to debank me, and they told the government to shove it because I'd been a customer for over 40 years. and it stopped. And then I did use Elizabeth Warren's Consumer
Protection Bureau.
Protection Bureau. I made complaints against PayPal, Western Union, and they reversed everything. PayPal called me and they said, "Oh, it's been an incredible misunderstanding. We don't know how this happened." So,
Ooh.
but the IRS suddenly contacted me and said that they'd found irregularities in my last tax return, and I had to go down in person and I had to confirm my identity. And they sent me in the letter, they said, make sure to bring da 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 da. So I made an appointment, went to downtown LA, and there was nobody in the waiting room. And I had to wait 2 hours, had to wear a mask, and my glasses were all steamed up. Eventually they saw me and they immediately said that I had brought the wrong documentation. And I hadn't thought to bring the letter with me. So I said, what's the right documentation? And they told me, and we made another appointment. I came in a week and a half later, same thing, nobody in the waiting room, had to wait for 2 hours. And then there was I spoke to a woman, and there was a man who had a little scooter, and it was the type of scooter that they used to be popular a few years ago. The little wheels are about this big, and it's got a long straight thing. Instead of a seat, it had a little pad that he would kneel on. So he would have one knee on the where the seat was, and he would push himself along. And so he was scooting through the building, and when this woman called me to her cubicle, he zoomed in and he stopped behind her and he just stared and watched as everything was going on. So he was the scooter bureaucrat who watched. It was his job to observe all the transactions that were carried out throughout the day.
Are you sure you weren't being punked?
Well, okay. There was a person who checked me in downstairs. There was a person who checked me in going in through the door. There was a person who checked me in when I was in the door. And then there was the cubicle, and then there was the scooter boss. So I had 5 different people carrying out this one situation for me. And eventually I was able to prove my identity. And they said, everything's fine. There are no more. I asked them, what are the irregularities in my tax returns? Oh, we can't tell you.
Somebody else did another filing in your name. Happens all the time.
Well, it would have been nice if they could have told me what the issue was, since I was asking to, and okay, this is in downtown LA, so I had to walk through a gigantic homeless encampment to get there.
Yeah.
It's a dystopia. Los Angeles is a dystopian city. There's no doubt about it. It's no different from the cities in Soylent Green, the cities in the science fiction movie Looper. I mean, it's a dystopia. And
even going back into the 60s, the civilized people live underground, and the people on the surface are primitive, uncivilized dregs, and that's what Los Angeles must look like, based on what you told me there.
well, it's horrifying because there's no attempt. I mean, okay, this fire happened. These fires happened because the state is a dystopia, and then they apply dystopian rebuilding rules that are going to make the situation for California exponentially worse, because these people are all going to leave. There's no reason for them to stay. Um, so California is going to lose crap loads of. California has a progressive income tax that relies almost exclusively on the wealthy
And the rich.
having a good year. And when the wealthy have a bad year, California has a bad year. So the wealthy have been leaving California in droves, and they're doing their best to drive the remaining ones out. It's amazing.
Yeah, frankly, if you lived in one of those Pacific Palisade houses and you get an insurance settlement for even half of what your house was worth, you might as well buy a house somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico
Yeah,
and not ever have to deal with this shit again. And if you're worried about hurricanes, buy one of those cement houses that no hurricane can top.
I
And
always
that's the
wondered
end
about
of it.
I always wondered about. You would think that okay, the tornado chasers. They put out these
Yeah,
cameras, and the cameras are housed in these flat. It's like a flattened pyramidical shape with the camera at the top,
yeah.
and the tornado they're made of rubber. They're about maybe 2 feet across. The tornadoes pass right over those things and don't pick them up.
No.
What if you built your house that shape?
Well, there are several shapes. There are dome houses
Mm-hmm.
made with cement, and now they have a new, not a new technology, but a new way of building these things. That the entire dome is built with cement, and it can be built in 24 hours. Uh, those will withstand any winds, of course. And if you are on high ground, fine. If you're not on high ground, build it on fucking stilts.
Mm-hmm.
And on the ground floor you have the open garage and the crap you don't mind losing, and the house is on top. I've seen these all across the country. It works like a charm. The other way is the way people have been building in Italy, in Spain, in South America forever, which is building with the cement cage,
Mm-hmm.
eh, uh, filling the holes with bricks. We use red bricks. You can use conch blocks. Who gives a shit? And wind is not going to tear those down. Period. End of story. The problem is when you get, 150-mile-an-hour winds getting inside a wooden house, that roof is going to come unglued and you're going to have to pick it up in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And the house is going to explode to the exterior. But if it is built of brick and cement or one of those dome houses, you have no problem. And if it's built with sufficient height, you have no problem with the tides either. I have, I do not understand why people still have problems with this.
Well, when I was watching the videos of the Palisades fire, most of those houses still had shingle roofs.
Yeah,
In 2024, they had shingle roofs.
yeah. I have a better idea. Go to a California forest and build a house with a thatched roof.
Yeah, exactly.
See how it goes. Um, but it's really adapting now. The question is not the natural disasters, which are, if not entirely foreseeable, it's going to happen. I mean, this was not the last fire in California. It's going to happen again and again and again. And with proper forest management, it may be smaller fires, but they're still going to be there. Uh, you're still going to have drought and rainy seasons alternating in California for freaking ever, because that's the way it is. But if you have the proper irrigation system and water management system, you can survive it. Eh, the problem is when people start acting with the explicit purpose of fucking up life for everybody so they will accept being taxed through their nose for cacamimi ideas. The fires are caused by climate change that is caused by cow farts. So we need to kill all the cows, and burn them. And idiots actually join with a pitchfork to go after the cows.
Well, I watch a lot of videos from British people, and
Mhm.
I watch fewer and fewer because no matter what the topic is, they manage to bring up climate change. And it's
All of the Europeans.
yeah, and they tell all these lies about the Antarctic ice pack and polar bears and all this shit that's like 15 years out of date now. And they've become dullards. That's the thing that gets me, is that Europeans have become complacent dullards. And the whole notion that you're putting all your faith in the government, and at the same time you're complaining ceaselessly about how corrupt and ineffective the government is, but you still love it. Like you are Europeans have a love-hate relationship with their governments, and they vote for the well, okay, they're not allowed to vote for a lot of things. Actually, they're in Europe, things are imposed on them, and they don't have any say in the matter. But as you were pointing out, the Reform Party in the UK is now what, the largest party in the UK?
Uh, Remember when we analyzed the elections in the UK and said Labour is fucked. They don't have a majority of the population. The kink in the election system that allowed them to have a majority in parliament is a freak of nature, and they're not going to last till May. Well, guess what? Not only they're not going to last till May, but the population in the UK is shifting farther right. So reform that had 10% of the vote in the last election, eh, if elections were held today, they would end up with 202 members of parliament, which is the largest bloc.
Mm-hmm.
And between reform and what's left of the Conservative Party, after they went on a rampage against themselves, it would be a clear, an absolute majority. And Labour doesn't get to 30%.
Well, look at their prime minister. I mean, this is like he's
why,
worse
why,
than
why, why do you wish me harm in that way?
well, it's really astonishing. Like, this guy is acting like he never had any idea he could win, and now that he's
Yeah,
in
he didn't.
power, he doesn't know what to do.
Well, in all fairness, it, it was the Conservatives shooting their own feet that gave them the victory. He couldn't fucking possibly win. And he won with a majority of parliament with 30% of the electorate.
Yep.
It's so fucking ridiculous. It's not even funny. But, that's where they stand. And Alternative for Deutschland is now the largest bloc, a voting bloc so far, not in the parliament, in Germany. By the way, thank you, David. And David, I forgot to mention to you, Thomas, when we were Speaking of the possibility of having podcasters in the White House press office, um, he just let us know that he does own a suit and he lives in the area. So, without objection, I would suggest
Yeah.
that if, in the very unlikely event that we're authorized, we name David our White House correspondent.
Well, lean on your connections to General Flynn. Have General Flynn put in a good word for Quad Verum and then send David.
Well, I don't lean on people for small favors. If
You
if if
should.
I lean on if I lean on him, I want something bigger for us. Um, but I never do. I cannot. That is a character flaw. I cannot ask people for favors like that. I just can't. I feel like shit if I do. Um, I expect people to act spontaneously, as I do.
Hmm.
Eh, But I don't know. An honor which I do not deserve, says David. On the contrary, my friend, you do. But we'll see. We'll see what we can do. I'm gonna be in DC on the 19th, and God knows if I happen to meet somebody that has anything to do with that, I will lean on them.
Definitely.
So we'll see. I have news for you on that front, but not now. Pull some strings, says Deb. You know what the problem is? One of the reasons I don't like to do those things,
Why?
I don't want to leave IOUs on my trail because people do favors for you and they expect to get paid eventually.
Definitely.
And I don't want to owe people, uh, uh, blank checks. It's That's the practical way. Uh, Proclarush Taodas, thank you so very much. And look at that, and we didn't even make him our White House correspondent. Um, Starmer, says Io, in answer to your question, is an ideologue. When reality refuses to comply with the plan that looks so good on paper, he reacts with confusion and then a tantrum.
Well, this is what American leftists are doing. This. Okay, let's see. Oh, 2008. It was Obama versus McCain. And I honestly thought McCain would win. I thought that
I did too.
everybody had a good time flirting with Obama. And then, they would get down to business and do the right thing. So when
Yep.
Obama won, I went, crap. And then I went and made myself a peanut butter sandwich. Um, I
You
thought,
didn't cry. You didn't cry on TikTok.
no, uh, Romney. Romney, I thought was doing pretty bad, and then he redeemed himself in the first debate. I thought, oh, great, he's
He's
he's going
got
to do
it.
he's going to do it two more times, and he's got it. Then he screwed up the second debate, and I went, up. Oh, he's pussing out, and he's going to lose. So Obama won, and I went, crap. And then I went and made myself a grilled cheese sandwich.
And then you cried on TikTok.
No, never cried on TikTok that time either.
I know. I know.
I knew on election night 2020 that they were stealing the election when 7 states stopped counting simultaneously for no
Oh
reason.
yeah.
And I went, okay, they're going to steal it. Trump warned us. And I was angry, but I also knew, even that early, I knew that Biden was going to screw up so badly that everyone would regret I hoped that Trump would run again, and then I saw I okay the when he started issuing these executive orders and changing policies after he'd lost the election, I knew okay he's laying the groundwork for his comeback, and I knew that Biden was going to do such a horrible job because I knew Biden's career. I knew that
because
Biden
he's Biden.
exactly when when
We knew that.
when Obama chose Biden and the press was saying he chose Biden to give his campaign gravitas, I was just beside myself with amused disgust because gravitas from Biden? No, he chose Biden because Biden was about the only guy he could find who wouldn't upstage him. Um, and
Bingo.
Biden didn't.
He chose Biden because Biden didn't have a constituency even within the Democratic Party. He was the little asshole who ran for president 3 times, and the highest he ever got was 1% of the vote. He was a nullity, and that's why he chose Biden. And the idea, and I remember, well, no, he's weak on foreign relations. That's why he needs a Biden. Oh
Yeah, yeah.
God, yeah, sure.
Yeah, remember that they were touting Biden as a foreign policy expert. Biden, who was wrong
In
on
what?
everything.
On everything, always.
That was,
And
that was his trademark. His trademark was to be wrong on absolutely everything.
yes, and he was for 40 years at the time. He was. Uh, I, I I cannot understand why the Democrats chose Biden for 2020. I really can't. Unless they expected Trump to win, and then they got rid of this asshole. You ran, you lost, goodbye. And suddenly, the still worked, and they were stuck with the little fuck for president. We
I
can
think,
speculate all day.
well, I do think that Trump wanted the country to experience how bad things could get.
You did say that back then.
Yeah,
I have it on film. I have you on film saying that in 2020.
yeah, and we did. It worked.
Hmm.
It's the damnedest thing. The Democrats, the Democrats were hit harder than they'd been hit. Okay, I saw a poll today, and it said that the Democrats have become the most unpopular political party in American history.
Well, no, there were others, but they are at the low point of their popularity. I think that the positive views of the Democrats are like 47%, which still puts them close to the half, to one half. And I'm pretty damn sure that the anti-Masonry party or the Progressive Party are a shitload less popular than the Democrats.
Well, okay,
Or
but those are like unknown.
well, they're unknown now, but at one point, the anti-Masonry Party was the second political force in the country. The progressives, when Theodore Roosevelt ran as a progressive, uh, it was a force to be reckoned with, uh, and they disappeared. But I will accept without any kind of comment that the Democrats are at the low point of their popularity in our lifetimes, at least since Roosevelt.
Yeah, it's and they're going to
What
try
did they
and
expect?
they're swinging for the fences in terms of trying to become even less popular. They're they're
Yes,
they're doing it. They're
I mean, come on, Hakeem Jeffries threatening protests in the streets. We're gonna fight in the streets. The son of a bitch sounds like Loretta Lynch after a trans operation.
well, it's not going to happen. We're never going to see the 2020 summer of love ever again. You know,
Uh, hopefully,
no, I mean
hopefully.
they tried like 15 times to give us the next, George Floyd, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. It was like, I don't care if the cops shot him 87 times or 92 times or whatever, you know.
Not enough at any rate.
Well, we live in an era where a sheriff in Florida is asked, why did they shoot him 15 times? And he says, because they ran out of
They
bullets.
run out of bullets. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
And when they ask people to, to shoot home invaders, and if you have a problem with that, you come to Florida. There are a couple of sheriffs in Florida that are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Let me see if I can show something here for you. No, I cannot. Why can't I do this? Okay. There was something wrong with this thing. Since you spoke of the summer of my discontent, look at this thing here. By the way, another good news, we've had assholes in UCLA in Colombia who had been already deported,
Mm-hmm.
canceling their student visas for doing shit like this. Now, the people who defend this are the same ones who are upset because Pete Hegseth took the portraits of Miley down in the Pentagon. Can you imagine that? This is okay, but don't touch Miley.
Well, I mean,
They took down Robert E. Lee and melted a magnificent bronze statue over 100 years old that cannot be replaced, that was a work of art under any consideration, that if anything, at the very least, should have been in a museum, and they melted it. Imagine somebody gets upset with Italians and melts the Mona Lisa.
well, this whole notion of erasing history, it's very Russian.
Yes,
If you look at Russia today,
it's very Marxist.
if you look at Russia today, the Russians believe that they single-handedly won World War II to the point where the Russians are taught the Russians are taught that they liberated France from the Nazis.
Yeah.
France.
Yes, I know.
And
Portugal.
the Russians are taught that they defeated the Japanese in battle. The Russians fought the Japanese. They declared war on Japan the day after the Hiroshima atomic bomb.
Yes.
That's when the
got
Russians
their ass kicked.
declared war.
Yes, because they wanted to grab the Kuril Islands.
Yeah. And at the beginning, I think it was still in the 30s. It was before the Japanese fought the Russians and mopped the earth with them.
Yes.
And so the Russians sat out the Pacific War until after Hiroshima. But the Russians, I mean, okay, Putin Putin announced two things today. Number one, they're sending the Baltic fleet to go out and confront NATO in the Baltic Sea. Nobody knows what that means. The Russians have cut several undersea cables by dragging the
Yes.
anchors of their ships. And so if the Russians are going to escort their cable cutting ships, then all that NATO has to do is use their submarines.
Yep.
And they can do a shitload of damage from under the water that the Russians can't defend against. Or NATO can order the Russians to. Okay, one of Trump's advisors announced today that NATO has to really up its spending because there's an enormous war larger than World War II on the horizon.
Yes.
I don't see it coming just because neither the Russians nor the Chinese have the weaponry or you have to remember World War II started in 1939 and ended in 1945. If we were to go to war against the Russians and the Chinese simultaneously, it would be over in a matter of about 4 months. So,
Yeah. If that long.
If that long. There's all this talk.
And frankly, NATO can take care of the Russians on its own, the rapid deployment force alone. And we can take care
Finland
of the Chinese in weeks.
Finland, Sweden, and Poland could take care of Russia by themselves.
Well, remember when the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, created a unified air command?
Yeah.
They have 250 fifth generation fighters.
Yeah.
That's all you need. They don't need anybody's help to gain air supremacy in Russia. Just those three. So it's people sometimes exaggerate. A lot of people in the finance industry do it all the time. When they want to sell you shit, they exaggerate by throwing the ball into the end zone. You could make 100% returns on this investment, 5% per year for 20 years, and that's 100%. So instead of telling you you can make 5% per year, they tell you you can make 100% in 20 years. And people get the 100% in their minds and think this is such a hot deal. These people in politics do the same thing. They want additional military budget. They know that if they use reasoning, logic, and real data, half of the people in Congress are going to fall asleep and the other half is going to run for the woods. So they tell you, they exaggerate the risk to justify what you need to do. Sometimes the methodology is wrong when the need is real, sometimes not. So
Well,
what this guy says, it's entirely bullshit. I know it, you know it, he knows it.
I heard that the U.S. had war gamed the war with China over Taiwan and that the U.S. would be doing 70% of the fighting in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Well, what people don't understand is that Japan and Taiwan alone could defeat the Chinese.
Yes.
The Japanese have a string of islands that stretch southward almost all the way to Taiwan. Every single one of those islands is bristling with anti-air defenses.
Yes.
So even if the Chinese goal was to bombard Taiwan into submission, all those missiles would be shot down, every single one of them, because they're pieces of crap. The Houthis, I remember they said the Chinese had invented a ship-killing missile that rendered aircraft carriers obsolete.
Obsolete, obsolete. I tell you, the Roosevelt doesn't have a chance.
It was called the glowworm or something like that. The Houthis,
Glowworm, you're correct.
the Houthis
Glowworm.
finally fired one of these at an American destroyer, an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, and we didn't fire back. And the reporters demanded, "Why didn't you fire at him?" And he said, "Because the missiles flew all around the sky and then they fell in the water. They
Yeah.
were never in danger." And this was
No,
this
no, no need to waste ammo.
right. You probably heard that the Chinese announced that they developed a much cheaper and far superior AI, and the stock
I've been
market,
laughing. I've been laughing my ass off
yeah,
since
and the
that came
stock
out.
market took a dump. At the time,
Yeah.
I heard from one guy, the Chinese are lying. And now it turns out, yes, the Chinese were lying. They didn't invent any such thing.
Surprise.
All the hysteria and panic was for nothing.
I did a poll in Twitter and I had three questions. Will this, what is the name of this shit? Uh, I'm having a brain fart. This Chinese AI uh, canard blow up in 6 months, in 1 month, or it's already happening? 78% said it's already happening.
Yeah,
Uh, they couldn't fool anybody. And the other 32% are, you know, natural born idiots. Of course, it was a canard. And by the way, it was done. Oh, this is going to kill NVIDIA's business. It was done with NVIDIA chips,
yeah.
mm, which they obtained violating export controls, something that NVIDIA will have to figure out. Um,
You
it
know
was
how
just,
the Chinese? Uh huh.
it was nothing but Chat GPT with NVIDIA H100s. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous.
You know how the Chinese love to put on these really tacky performances where it's like traditional outfits with a kind of Las Vegas flair. Well, they just did one of these with a bunch of robots that were like spinning plates. It was like
Yes,
half the performers were human and half were robots. That robot is so unsuccessful that it's become a tradition over the last 4 years. The robot comes out at this sports event and it fires off a balloon or whatever. And for the last 3 years, the robot would come out and it would fall right on its face. So the last year, 24, the robot had two attendees who held it up under the armpits, and its little feet were going beep, 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 beep above the ground. And they turned it around, they sat it in place, they held it up while it fired off the balloon, and then they carried it off the field. Um, the Chinese have been showing off their robot box stackers, for
yeah,
warehouses. These things stack boxes, and all of a sudden they go and they just collapse and they're
yeah.
done.
Uh,
And
yeah,
these, you see all these idiots saying the Chinese are decades ahead of us in robots. Tell that to Boston Dynamics. You know,
God, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Boston Dynamics, how about Tesla?
exactly.
Uh, there is another company that came out with a humanoid looking robot that I think it's going to cause a lot of men to leave their wives, uh, and not because of the sexual qualities. Uh, People are stupid, Thomas, which being redundant. Uh, Io says here Chinese AI, which was actually ChatGPT's model with censorship and run on NVIDIA H100s. That's all it was. And DeepSeek was the name of this idiocy. Um, China never had any technology. but it's always lied about technology.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s, they had this expo that went around the world touting the marvels of China. Among them was surgery with acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
And they would show you pictures, of surgeons performing open heart surgery while talking to a patient that had a little curtain over here so he couldn't see his own fucking heart. Uh, and he had needles all over, and the surgeon was saying, "Well, everything is doing okay. Oh, thank you. Are you touching my aorta now?" And of course, the whole thing was a lie.
Of course. It
It,
was
it,
old
it was
trick.
Yeah, it's like the guy who used to get chicken bones out of people's stomachs in stadiums. It's all bullshit. They never had advanced medicine. They never had advanced surgery. All of the fucking shit of herbalism that comes out of China is Amazon tribe level witch doctor craft. Have you seen their Chinese design cars?
No, I haven't actually. I've seen enormous dead parking lots full of electric cars that are all rusting to pieces.
They make the Trabant look like a Beamer. Now, 30 years ago, we started manufacturing in China because China gave us free labor.
Hmm.
So Motorola, remember Motorola? Oh, poor thing. Back then, they used to dominate the cellular phone business.
Hmm.
And they started manufacturing their cellular phones in China. And Nokia followed suit, and everybody else followed suit. And then Apple started making their phones in there because, if you wanted to compete, you couldn't have higher labor costs. So fuck it. That doesn't mean the Chinese can make a fucking phone. That means they can put it together if you tell them how. We try to manufacture planes in China. We can't. Their materials and their and their labor is so unskilled that they cannot make a DC-9 without it falling from the sky minus one wing.
Well, that's why their DC-9 copy can't legally be sold outside of China, because they've never been able to figure out how to make the wing spar conform to Western standards of
Yeah.
safety.
How many jet engines do they make in China?
They get it from the Russians.
Illusion engines. So they are going to defeat the world with sixth generation, man. Why not seventh? I don't know. Fighter planes, and they cannot make a fucking engine for a DC-9.
Well, and their sixth generation aircraft can't retract its wheels.
Isn't that lovely? Yeah, remember that test flight? It was so fucking ridiculous. Uh, so the whole thing is preposterous. I don't know why some people try to exaggerate, because, in theory, if we do nothing, the Chinese do have the will, and over time may have the money to develop something that threatens us, say, 70 years from now. But right now, they don't have a navy, they don't have an air force. The army is shit.
The Chinese sent thousands of shoulder fired anti aircraft missiles to Syria. And within short order, the Free Syrian Army threw them away because they said they either didn't work or they missed the target. They were
Mhm.
100% worthless.
Yeah. How about the North Korean soldiers? Have they proven to be the fighting machines everybody told us they were?
Well, it's the damnedest thing. The North Koreans are too racist for the Russians, if you can believe that, and they're too criminally dishonest for the Russians. So the North Koreans steal everything that isn't tied down, and they won't take orders from people who they regard as Untermenschen. So they've been removed from the front entirely. They're worthless. They're worse than
Yeah.
worthless.
And by the way, the Chinese soldiers are no better.
No, the only war that the People's Liberation Army has fought since World War II was the Sino-Vietnamese War, and they lost 30,000 dead in 3 weeks.
From a country that was prostrated after 50 years of war with France and the US.
The Vietnamese, at the time they fought the Chinese, they had just finished fighting the US and they were simultaneously fighting the Cambodian Khmer Rouge.
Yep.
They defeated the Chinese in 3 weeks.
Yep. And the Khmer Rouge, by the way, were the assholes who were China's little baby with Pol Pot. Who the fuck remembers Pol Pot? With Pol Pot as their tin pot dictator, the Chinese went all out to protect Pol Pot.
And Pol Pot was like a retarded version of Mao Zedong. That when the Khmer Rouge came into the capital Phnom Penh, the same day their troops arrived, they forcefully evacuated the entire city's population to the countryside to become farmers.
Yes. The killing fields.
The killing fields. So they demolished any opportunity. They called it, it was the year zero. And in the year zero, you would have an entirely agricultural society where everybody was worked to death or summarily executed or tortured.
Yep, or died of malnutrition because obviously it's the same thing over and over again. You just said that according to these plans, the U.S. would have to fight China in the Pacific. Fight what?
Exactly.
The fishing fleet?
The Chinese have unveiled the troop barges they'll use. You know what they meant by unveiling the troop barges? They moved a bunch of car barges over to this area and said these are now troop barges.
Yeah.
So it's like
put 100 people in there, they sink.
Well, the troops will have to stand on the deck, exposed to the elements.
Right.
And
I'm sure those barges were designed to withstand, say, 3-foot waves.
Well, exactly. It's like the Russians. The Russians, their ghost fleet.
Those are river barges. The ones I saw are river barges.
The Russians are using river barges to try and send oil across oceans to countries that are buying it illegally, which is why you had like 3 of those barges break in half in like 3 days.
At this rate, you're going to be able to walk over the sunken barges instead of using the current bridge.
No, I mean these people, they're ridiculous. Like think about it. Everybody badmouths the United States. The Chinese, they take over everything by force, and then they start putting up signs in Chinese to boast about their non-existent prowess. And it's the name for China is the Middle Kingdom. That means they're in the middle between heaven and earth. So the Han Chinese view all other people as Untermenschen.
Yeah, that's what I said. The Chinese army is no better than the North Korean army. They have the same shitty mentality, and they have the same shitty training. They're probably better fed and with less parasitosis, probably. Not surely. But there's nothing. There is no technology. China owns no technology. China designs nothing. Their patents are shit. Their products are shits on steroid. When the Japanese were trying to develop their industry after World War II, They came out with knockoffs of American products that were notoriously bad quality. Honda cars were ridiculously bad quality. They were rust packets. But that shit was better than the best that the Chinese can produce today.
Well, okay, I know about flamethrowers. Um, the Russians
Well,
invent
I sell you as the only living expert. You better know.
well, the Russians invented what they called the explosive piston flamethrower, which was one of the stupidest ideas ever to go into mass production. That the way a flamethrower works is you have a tank full of flammable liquid, and generally speaking, you have a separate tank of pressurized gas, which is almost always nitrogen because it's neutral, and you unscrew the tap that allows the nitrogen into the fuel tank. You spray. Every known portable flamethrower has about 10 seconds worth of firing. Um, the Russians invented what they called the explosive piston flamethrower, where they had three tanks, and at the bottom was a disc that had a black powder charge under it. So when you pulled the trigger, it would blow up the charge, and this disc would fly forward and push the flammable liquid out of the flamethrower. Each tank held 1 second worth of flame, so you had 3 seconds worth of flame versus 10. So the Chinese adopted that flamethrower into the flamethrower they still use today, which is the Type 74, which has two tanks. It has 2 seconds of flame. 2 seconds. It's worthless. I mean, and a flamethrower can be refilled in the field. The Type 74 can't be refilled in the field because you have to reposition the piston. You have to take out the expended black powder charge. You have to put another black powder charge in. You have to refill it. You can't do it. It's ridiculous. This is their great contribution to the art of flame warfare is a 2 second flamethrower. It's
Wonderful.
yeah.
How many fighter jets does the Chinese Air Force have?
Okay, the J6 is their alleged current model. That's the so-called stealth airplane that has canard wings on the front.
Yeah, and big bolts.
Well, it's the air intakes are copied from the MiG 25 rivet
Yes.
rivet, and the underside looks like a boxcar, and they claim this thing is a stealth fighter. It's ridiculous,
Yes.
and
No, no.
it's twice
It's
the length of the F-35.
yeah. It's stealthy like a shoebox with wings.
Yeah, I don't know how many they have. They made a video showing off their 80-year-old bomber that has a range of like 800 miles. I
Yeah.
mean, the B-52 has been re-engined, and this thing will now be able to fly from Louisiana to anywhere in the world, bomb it, and
Yeah.
come back without
And come
refueling.
back. Yeah. Without refueling. They used to do it with the refueling
Yeah.
in there. And by the way, and 180 J20s.
Wow.
There are 1600s F-16s in operation today.
And that's just F-16. That doesn't count F-35s. It doesn't
No,
count F-15s.
no,
That doesn't
no,
count
and
soft Drakens or not
it
Drakens.
doesn't. It doesn't count anything.
Yeah.
It, our fighter fleet is somewhere around 3,000.
Yeah.
Any which one can fly circles around any kind of shit the Chinese have, and they will never see them coming. They will never see the F-35 that send them to the middle of the ocean. Never. So this idea that China somehow poses a grave military threat to the US today. It's bullshit. Now, if we had Biden for another 20 years, the Chinese would rule over us.
Yeah, if Kamala Harris had served 2 terms, for example.
Yeah. But it's not going to happen. And the Chinese better fall into place. Their economy is suffering terribly. It, we've been saying when it started years ago, the exodus the exodus of companies from China is continuing unabated. They they can no longer produce any kind of computer chip that is good for anything. Eh, Those are produced in Taiwan, in Minnesota, elsewhere, but not in China. Uh, that whatever the fuck the name was, I'm already having a brain fart. I think it's so stupid that uh, that deep sick. You know what? It's like the deep throat of AI, and even that is with contraband NVIDIA chips. They cannot even fake it without getting stuff in the US.
I think
They're going the way of Bangladesh.
there was a very good science fiction movie called Arrival, and it was about these these extraterrestrial craft. There were 12 of them that all appeared out of thin air at various points in the world, and eventually the humans were they figured out that there was an opening and they could enter it, and behind a glass wall were these creatures called tetrapods, 7 foot,
Yep.
7 legged, sort of octopus squid trees. And in the movie, Amy Adams played a linguist, and she was able to communicate directly to them. The tetrapods communicated by squirting ink, and the ink would form circular letters, and they're all circles, and they had little drips coming off, and that was the variation in theme. So one circle with a certain amount of drips meant something, and the tetrapods had no concept of time, because time was simultaneous, and you could be in multiple places simultaneously in the tetrapod world. So the Americans determined that the tetrapods were benign, but the Chinese thought that they were belligerent, because the Chinese were communicating with them through the game of Go. And
Yes.
the American linguist said that in a game, you have either win or lose. A game is by its very nature an act of belligerence.
There is no tie in Go. There is no compromise.
Exactly. And so the Chinese fucked up. But in the movie, the Chinese were the world's only superpower. And the guy who the Chinese chief of staff was known as General Domino, because whatever he did, all other countries in the world would follow. So the Chinese were basically running the world. And there was this scene, the craft that was communicating with the Chinese was over water. There was a scene that showed the mighty Chinese Blue Water Navy with its multiple aircraft carriers going out to confront the aliens. And It was the silliest thing in the world. Number one, that the world relied on China to and then the linguist saved the day by she discovered that if you speak this language, you would become a time traveler yourself. So she went into the future and spoke to the general and then came back to the present and managed to stop the war right before it started. But it was all up to the Chinese and their mighty blue water navy.
Right.
And we were helpless. We were waiting to see what General Domino would do because the world depended on General Domino. And that movie was financed by China. And so, of course, we had to put in there that the Chinese made all the world's decisions. And it's like, please, please.
Well, at least they can get some idiot to put it in a third-rate movie. Uh, in in real life, they cannot feed their own people.
No,
They have zero technology, and the one gravy train they had, which was the infiltration of our labs and classrooms and lecture halls in American universities, with both activists like the one who was deported um, yesterday, and spies, and uh, CCP hopefuls that are on MIT or whatever, with the idea that they will learn as much as they can to become the scientists of tomorrow's China. Uh, that thing is coming to an end in the next 3 years, not four. They're going home. They're not going to learn anything from us. They're not going to work in our labs. They're gonna not going to find out what the fuck we're doing until they buy it in a supermarket. And we're not going to train their next generation scientists. And without that, they are on the technological level of Rwanda.
I think given the inherent problems of Chinese culture, you could import everything we were doing scientifically and technologically, and they still wouldn't be able to do it.
No, no, they won't. And we will continue to manufacture here at home, believe it or not, in Mexico and Canada, because they will bend over, grab their ankles, open wide, and take whatever Trump dishes out.
Well, they have no
And
choice.
we're going back to normal. They have no choice. Mm. Anybody who thinks that Claudia Sheinbaum has anything to decide in the next 3 years is out of their fucking mind. And in Canada, we're going to see the, I mean, it's already done. Trudeau is going wherever idiots go to retire. And we're going to have Polievre, who is too much of a socialist for my taste, but in terms of Canada, as close as it gets to a libertarian government. And they're going to, and Polievre is going to work closely with the US because he's not half as stupid as Trudeau. And we're going to see Canada clear itself of the jihadist crap that they allowed into their country. Eh, Again, because they have no choice.
Well, this
They
is
really don't.
if you want to do business with us, there's certain things you can't host people who are planning terrorist attacks against us.
Yeah. And the thing is that they also freelance in Canada, so they're having a shit ton of problem with terrorist attacks in Canada, only half of which show up in the American press.
Well, I that reminded me. Okay, the air traffic control system. Okay, they went in and they said there's too many white males here, and so they prohibited about 3,000 white males who were slated to be hired. They
Yes.
basically drawn up all the papers, and they negated all that, and so they're they are short about 3,000 people, but the air traffic control system, the FAA adopted a complete immunity for air traffic controllers. Previously, if you had two near misses, you were taken off the job and you were retrained.
Yes. If you had them again, you were fired.
Currently, all air traffic controllers have to do is invoke this rule, and there are no consequences whatsoever. They can remain on the job, and they can have as many near misses as they want, and there are no consequences whatsoever. And they adopted that as part of the DEI initiative that got rid of the 3,000 white males that they said they didn't want anymore, and simultaneously they did away with accountability. So there are now, when you fly, just keep in mind, and also they stopped counting near misses. They undercount near misses, and the air traffic controllers who cause near misses are now immune to any
There were about 600 last year.
Yep.
Real numbers. Speaking of real numbers, this is how my mind works. I'm sorry. The head of the Census Bureau resigned.
Oh,
you keep getting good. See, I've already forgotten 75% of the news this week because there are so fucking many. It is raining anvils on the Democrats.
yep.
When they think, has it stopped? Bunk, another anvil. It's core. Can you imagine the cartoon for this?
Well, actually, the cartoonist, he did a cartoon called The Far Side, Gary something or other.
Yes, I remember in the 80s.
He did a cartoon, and a man was standing at the window with his hands in his pockets, and it was raining grand pianos, and he was saying, "Boy, I'd hate to be outside on a day like this."
I would so hate to be a Democrat on a day like this.
Yep.
It's Gary Larson.
Gary Larson.
Yep. What is that? Quote from the film in 2000, from the film 2012. Leave it to the Chinese. Didn't think it was possible to build several global flood managing ships.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever see that movie?
No, I didn't. I'm kind of curious now because I think it should be very funny.
Yeah, the Chinese built 12 Noah's Arks. The premise of the movie is that, remember, the world was supposed to end on 2012.
Yes,
So
the Mayan prophecy.
right. So everything started happening at once. Like the world was cracking open, and so the Chinese built 12 Noah's Arks for the world, and each one was like the length of the United States or whatever. And our heroes managed to get inside one of them. I can't remember if there was a lottery or whatever, but yeah. So the Chinese saved us in the year from the year 2012. Can you imagine being in the Chinese Noah's Ark? It would be going out over the water, and then it would just go. The back would break, and both ends would go down.
Oh God! I'm beginning to imagine Armageddon as shit. Anvils raining like on the Democrats today, locust and all the jazz, and volcanic eruptions, and suddenly the earth opens up, and in a bowl of fire, Al Gore comes back.
The last time I saw him,
What?
he looked like a wood owl, and
Yes.
it was the weirdest.
Whatever happened to that fuck?
I don't know. I mean,
They
okay,
wanted to run him instead of Kakala.
well, every now and then there's a cult leader who says the world is going to end at Wednesday at
Yes.
10:30, and they all gather and they wait for it, and it doesn't happen. He goes, I don't know what happened. I miscalculated.
Mm.
Al Gore told us that we had 11 years to go, or 8 years, or 7 years, or 15 years, or whatever. And the day came and went, and nobody said, "Gee, Al, what was that? An Inconvenient Truth?" Was that the name of his propaganda film?
That was the name of his propaganda film. We remember the poor polar bears on the verge of extinction. The last one floating over there on an iceberg. Uh, Polar bears are a fucking plague.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're
We,
everywhere.
we need to start culling the herds.
Yeah.
Uh, It's everything these imbeciles ever come up with turn turns to shit inevitably. Uh, we're all dead. We ate each other. We run out of water. We run out of oil. The world froze. The world melted. Hurricanes partitioned the continents.
We all
Um,
drowned. The waters flooded the whole.
yeah, we have beachfront property on Twin Peaks. Uh, and what I find uh, oddly amusing is that people still buy this kind of shit. It's the same thing that we were talking with China. They've used this sing song of World War III continuously for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Eh, And you know what? Today, as 20 years ago, to fight a war, you need an adversary, you need an enemy, you need somebody else that you can fight a war with. You cannot fight a war with yourself. It's kind of like uh, 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 jacking off on a military scale. But the thing is, you can't. And the US has no natural enemies.
No.
There is no country on earth that can stand up to it.
The Okay. War with Russia or the Soviet Union. The Russians were going to send a fleet of tanks that would overwhelm everything. Today, there was a video released by the Ukrainians. It showed a single German Leopard 2 tank operated by the 33rd Armored Brigade in Ukraine. And it destroyed an entire column of almost 20 armored vehicles single handedly.
Yes.
What the Ukrainians do when they fire, they keep the tank moving all the time. And the German gun system is stabilized. So you
Yes.
lock on the target, your body can be doing this, but the gun is stable. And it was, here comes the column coming down the road, boom, 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 boom. It was a slaughter, and this is how a war with the Soviet Union would go. It would be
Well, not the Soviet Union anymore. Russia.
Russia, yeah, the
Yes.
Russian Federation rather. This is how
Yeah.
it would go. And okay, the Chinese used meat assaults in the Korean War, but that was when the average Chinese person had like 12 kids. So if 10 of them died in the Korean War, nobody cared.
They had, you know that there are various people speculating that the total population of China is being highly exaggerated, and they're probably somewhere around 5 to 600 million now.
they've had it.
which makes sense because after the long time they had the one child policy, now the older Chinese are dying, and there is no generation behind them.
Well, also see, when they instituted the one child policy, the Chinese engaged in infanticide of all their female children. All their
Yes,
female babies were murdered.
they had a demographic explosion of jerk offs.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh, blind eye. I forgot this too. I have to bring him in because these are my two favorite ones. Acid rain killed all the trees.
Hmm.
Remember, acid rain was going to kill the North American forest, which is incidentally the largest fucking forest in the world, much larger than the Amazon, and
Hmm.
it goes from essentially, let me see, Orlando, Florida to the Northern Territories, and from the Atlantic to Appalachia. Is the biggest fucking forest there is. It's larger than it ever was. Acid rain did not kill it. And and we have to wear factor 5,000 sunscreen because of the ozone hole.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always wrong. Always.
Okay. I saw a true crime
And
episode,
and
and
and I'm sorry, and we're talking about the one child policy. That's a consequence of the population bomb bullshit of the early 70s.
yeah. So the Chinese had to lead the way into oblivion. Okay, I was telling you about British people who blather. I was watching a true crime program about some crime in Argentina, and all of a sudden, this earnest British narrator was talking about the incredible deforestation problem that's plaguing Argentina.
What the fuck are they talking about?
Argentinians are cutting down everything in sight so they can have grass fields for their cows.
Let me tell you something of Argentina, and this is the part that I know well. There were no fucking trees. The, the Spaniards had to import wood because there were no fucking. The only thing in the fucking pampas was something that looks like a tree. It's fucking huge, called ombu. It's not a tree. It's a herb. There's no wood in there, and you have a grassy prairie that goes from the Atlantic to the fucking Andes.
No. This British guy said it has every known ecosystem in the world there. It has mountains, it has deserts, it has
Yeah. When you get 1,500 fucking miles from the Atlantic, you hit the mountains. Unless you do it at the latitude I was born, where you hit the mountains only about 900 miles, and then you have a plane again. It, the Argentine Pampas, it makes Texas look like Montana.
mhm.
It's a flat grassland that goes on for fucking ever. From the Negro River at the north of Patagonia. By the way, south of the Negro River is, kind of like semi-desertic, no fucking trees either. The only trees are in the mountains, and those are too far for anybody to
Well,
get
also
to.
you're not gonna chop down all the trees in the mountains in order to plant grass up in the mountains for your.
No, you can't. You don't have, and the only trees that you find in Buenos Aires, in Santa Fe, are the ones that immigrants planted, like eucalyptus,
Mhm.
to have some shade and some wood, which in colonial times they couldn't fucking do without permission of the king for each and every tree. And then when you wanted to cut them down, you needed a permission from the king to cut down the fucking tree.
But see,
So it was a big deal. But in the 1920s, they planted like crazy. Wind barriers. In the back of my house in the country, we had two lines of eucalyptus and a line of pines, which are not native to this land. that were planted in a specific sequence to serve as wind barriers because the wind was blowing from fucking Andes to our house with no obstacle. Without a wind barrier, whatever you build in there one day is going to pop up in Africa. So the guy is beyond stupid, to tell you.
Well,
It's
he's a young British guy who believes what somebody told him, and he didn't do any research. You know, he found some kind of stock footage of deforestation in the Amazon, and then, claimed that this was an issue in Argentina.
yeah, and in the Amazon is bigger than it ever was.
Well, this is the thing.
There's been a 20% increase of greenery in the fucking Amazon because, yes, there is a lot of land in some areas of Mato Grosso state and all that jazz that has been raised for pasture. They found out soon enough that it doesn't fucking work that way.
Yeah, the ground is
The soil is useless for grassland.
Yeah.
It turns into a fucking swamp.
Yeah.
Still, there has been, close to civilization, but you know those maps where you have satellite pictures of the U.S. is all bright all the way from the Atlantic to the Rockies, and then again in the Pacific coast. South Korea is bright, North Korea is dark. Try to find a fucking light away from the shore, from the Atlantic shore of Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
There's one point where Brasilia is. The rest is nobody. There's nobody. There are things you cannot do. There are no railroads. There are no roads. There are no shit. And the jungle is infinite.
Well,
I know. I walked and flown the width and length of it.
Remember when Maduro in Venezuela annexed Guyana and said that he was going to take it by force?
Remember what we said?
Well, also, I mean, good luck. Let's say you get your tanks through those jungles.
Let's say you get a soldier through those jungles.
Exactly.
It makes the Darien Straits look like the Champs-Élysées. By the way, did you notice how quickly all of that shit disappeared?
Sure.
I wonder if they discussed it with Grinnell.
Well, also the Dutch said. I mean, the Dutch are still. They still have the Dutch Guyanas. Is that? No,
the Dutch Guyana is Suriname.
Okay.
It's an independent country with Paramaribo as its capital.
Do the Dutch have the Antilles still? The Netherlands.
Well, no, they're all independent countries now. They used to have Aruba. Aruba is independent. Of course, they have a close relation. The only country with colonies is France.
True.
They still have the French Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
They still have Martinique.
Mm-hmm.
They still have a number of islands. The only European transatlantic, because I want to include the US and Canada and all that jazz, the only one of these countries with colonies is France.
Mm-hmm.
They never gave them up. They fought tooth and nail to keep Vietnam and Algiers and Morocco. We know with what results. They did manage to keep French Guiana and all that jazz, while the English and the Dutch literally pushed them out. You're going to be independent. Thank you very fucking much. Don't worry, we will come and visit. Curacao is also a Dutch island, same as Aruba. Oh God, what do you expect, Cesario? When in the UK it's taught that we must stop the deforestation of Britain, when by the time the Romans arrived in 40 AD, the trees had been gone for fucking centuries. True, they were gone. You know Sherwood Forest?
Mm-hmm.
where Robin Hood used to hide.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Sherwood Forest.
Mm-hmm.
You can see from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
You can count the trees using your fingers. This exists only in the fantasies of people who never left their home.
Well, okay, something happened. Most of the forests left in the UK are privately owned, and the British passed a law saying that every new structure had to be 20% reliant on renewable resources, and the most abundant renewable resources wood. So all these privately owned forest owners started selling off all their forests because why pass up this opportunity? And so the trees started getting chopped down, and the air quality got worse because of all the wood smoke being produced by the
Of
new
course.
wood burning, all in the name of environmentalism.
Well, environmentalism. This country waged a war on paper mills.
Mm-hmm.
It destroyed the economies of cities like Mexico, Maine, or Berlin, New Hampshire, because paper mills.
Mm-hmm.
They were the cause of deforestation. What they didn't tell you is that paper mills were self-sustaining operations where they planted trees
Mm-hmm.
and rotated the fields. So by the time they got to field number 10, field number 1 was already full grown, and in that little circle, they planted and cultivated their own trees, uh, and they destroyed economies. And now, of course, we bring paper. This country imports paper.
Mm-hmm.
How stupid
Well,
is that?
John Frankenheimer made a horror movie called Prophecy, and it was about a paper plant, a paper mill that was dumping mercury into the rivers, and it was producing enormous, spooky, deformed bears. And
Yeah, like they're as easy to find as what we call it. Oh God, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. Well, the thing about the movie was that the only guy who made any sense at all was the guy who ran the paper mill, and he was saying exactly what you were saying. He was saying, "Why would we destroy the forest when it would put us out of business?"
Right.
And as for I mean, they were I guess they were using mercury as some kind of uh, they were poisoning the wood, the parasites inside the wood or something stupid like that.
Yeah, but they didn't use mercury for that. The metal. Um, in when I was making porcelain, I used to use mercury sulfate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that doesn't contaminate anything.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it was a dumb movie, um, but I just thought it was pretty amazing. And of course they had heroic Native Americans, all played by non. I mean, one of them was
Yeah,
Armando.
by Elizabeth Warren.
Well, Armando Sante, who's an Italian.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was
Uh,
it was that always struck me that the only guy in the movie who made any sense at all was the
yeah.
paper mill owner.
I mean, I spent a lot of time in the Northeast. I used to live in New Hampshire. I still miss it, by the way. And I'll tell everybody and their mothers, oh, but the cold. Oh, but the only reason I don't live in New Hampshire is my wife is a tropical bird, and she cannot survive the idea of a New Hampshire winter anymore. Eh, just to know that on the other side of that three-panel window, it's 9 below, will send her to a hospital with a psychotic breakdown. So I can't live in New Hampshire, but I miss it. It's one of the few places in this world I consider my own. Eh, but I travel to all of the mill towns. God, These people ought to be swimming in money, but they can't because of these imbeciles.
I went to Massachusetts, and the mother of the woman I went there to see gave me a guided tour of the local area, and there were all these abandoned paper mills.
Yeah, in Western Mass, yeah,
Yeah.
Northwestern Mass. Um, and you know they destroyed industry, they destroyed income, they impoverished people, and it does nothing. 20
Well,
years from then, all you have to show is the ruins. It's not like they destroyed to build something better. No, they destroyed for destroying's sake.
well, this is leftism is all about bringing everybody down to the bottom. It's never about raising people up
No.
from the bottom. It's about bringing everything that's above you, bringing it all down to the bottom.
Yeah, we want equity. Everybody's gonna be poor as shit and live in Skid Row in LA.
Except for the people implementing this ideology.
Well, the overlords need a little consideration, you see. Anybody as brilliant and educated, any luminary like, say, Karen Bass,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is a seer, is a seer and a prophet, and the holder of the lamp of truth, uh, must be taken care of. God forbid she we need her one day. These people are fucking nuts, man. These people are fucking nuts. This is everything that every criticism of utopias warned us about. From the island of Dr. Moreau to 1984, everybody who warned about trusting utopias was right. And we have them in these people. Fortunately, eh, we now seem to be in the process of getting rid of Animal Farm remains as true today as when Orwell wrote it. Uh, it's I'm gonna blow our Brits friends' mind. Gulliver Travels remains as true today. Los Angeles is in the hands of Lilliputians,
Mm-hmm.
literally. Um, the good news, if you will, and I know we agree on this one. A reference to, let me see, what were the exact words that we used here. Buckle up, he's doing it. Trump and his team are doing it. They are dismantling the reign of the Lilliputians brick by brick every day. And not one brick a day, a
Mm-hmm.
hundred bricks a day. I lose count. I realized that yesterday I missed four or five important things, already a day late when they're already doing something else. And it is a strategy, it is done by design.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the idea, of course, is how do you destroy an entrenched nomenclature of Gramscian plants that control the government of the United States from the administrative side and put obstacles uh, before anybody who wants to change things. How do you overcome that resistance? This is the big lesson that I didn't know if Trump had learned on the first term, because the first term was Deep State 1, Trump 0. But you know what? He's come for the second half, refreshed with a better team. And so far is Trump 2000, deep state 0.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing how they're doing it, and they learned their lesson. And the way to do it is to flood the field. You don't throw one ball eh, that can be intercepted. You throw 2,000 balls. Even if they catch one, they're 1,999 down. It's an attack on all fronts. And it is a methodic, systematic, orderly dismantling of the deep state, the power of the administrative state. And these assholes haven't had time to have a fit yet,
Mm-mm.
let alone answer. They, they already suing the administration over a number of EOs, which, by the way, happens to be a singularly pitiful number because at the time it takes them to prepare one lawsuit, they have another 1,000 measures. And have you noticed all the Democrats are complaining about uh, Pam Bondi
Mm-hmm.
and um, oh my God, FBI.
Kash Patel.
Kash Patel, Kash Patel fired 8,000. Kash Patel is not yet the director of the FBI. He hasn't been confirmed, asshole.
Mm-hmm.
This
They
is
don't
the
know.
interim team that is
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
Wait till Kash Patel actually walks into that office. Oh, because Pam Bondi is firing the attorneys that participated. Not Pam Bondi, you stupid ass. You haven't confirmed her yet. She hasn't walked into her office yet. This is the interim team that is doing it. And that is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Because the strategy of placing your people as interim acting attorney general, acting director of FBI, after firing everybody, is giving them the chance to soften the ground even before the political appointees come in.
Mm-hmm.
And when the political appointees come in, they already have 3,000 meters advantage on the rest of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
There is I like the expression, not everybody does. Trump is giving the deep state a beef enema.
Mm-hmm.
It's destroying them spiritually, morally, and physically. Their capacity to react is being eroded faster than they can get upset. Trump is doing it. This time is serious. This time he's getting rid of the nomenclature. And wait till he starts closing down entire departments. He just did one. He just closed down U.S. aid,
Mm-hmm.
the Democrat cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Democrat politicians, he cannot do that. It's not for the president to do, because what was created by Congress must be it was created by an executive order by Jimmy Carter, you moron. It wasn't created by Congress. And institutions that are born by executive order are killed by executive order. And even before we finish reviewing all of the graft associated with the $3 trillion the Democrats stole from us last year, USAID is no more. If I told you what I do know of USAID, in Argentina they used to The embassy used to give money to a magazine for the trans community, all five of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this wonderful multicolor magazine that just announced it's closing down because 2 weeks after the last check, they ran out of money and there's no more coming. They used to finance the publishing on books on female eroticism in Pakistan. That's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ridiculousness. And as usual, you authorize 2 million and they actually use 500,000 and 1.5 million comes back in various ways, including the printers they use, for instance. So he's doing it. He's doing it faster and better than I ever imagined possible. It's going to be studied. You know how people crow about the advances of Milei in Argentina in 1 year, which are substantial?
Mm-hmm.
Peanuts. What Trump is doing dwarfs this. So let's celebrate.
Yeah.
And uh, I'm going to ask you if you have anything else to say before we go for the word. But thank you to everybody who contributed to the show today through the chat. Very much needed and appreciated. I love you guys. And for those of you watching us in other platforms, please remember this is free to watch, but it's not free to produce or run. So please contribute if you can. The best way is to come to Odyssey and contribute through the chat or support buttons, or even join as a member. Now, since this month, there are going to be some changes on the merchant services provided to Odyssey. I have no idea how this shit is going to work starting February 3rd. So I'll keep you posted. In the meantime, quadverum.com/support us. You can make a monthly or single time contribution. We'll very much appreciate it. That's it. Anybody who made comments on YouTube or Twitter. Oh, and the other way is to subscribe to my Twitter handle at the Brother Lie. The only reason I don't tell you to do this one here is because his is not monetized yet, so we cannot do it. I don't know if we'll ever do it, but in any case, the money goes to the same purpose of financing what we are trying to do here. So, at the Brother Lie, you can subscribe $5 per month, and the money comes here. Otherwise, they stay here. Quadverum.com/support us, and that's enough for shaking the money tree. I hope that some of you do. And thank you so much for those who did. Anything we left on the inkwell, Thomas?
I don't think so.
Okay, in that case, let me check the last comments on the chat. I never thought I'd see the day that the Dem Party would react to Trump with such weak sauce. Well, no, they're not reacting with weak sauce. They're throwing everything they have at them. They're just not effective anymore. Like Thomas said just a little while ago, yeah, they're going to try to lead up another resistance or another summer of 2020. It doesn't work anymore. Police are going to react. Trump is going to send the National Guard. Trump knows he's got 4 hours to make this country great again. He's not going to pussyfoot this time around. The Constitution is on his side. The law is on his side. He's got the balls to do it and the people to second him. These shits have no chance. You call for a blood on the streets like Loretta Lynch, you're going to end up with your ass in the slammer. Period. And on that note, Thomas, do you have a last word for us?
Agnate.
Agnate with an N as in Nancy?
Agnate. Agnate.
T-E, agnate. Thank you so much, my friend. And to everybody else, good night. Okay. Let me turn the lights on here. Shit, I drank 4 bottles of the stuff.
Uh-oh.
No wonder I had to pee. Still live? How are we still alive? How are we still alive? This is nonsense.
Yep, it does say live.
It does say live. Goodbye.